Life changes. You lose love, you lose friends, you lose pieces of yourself that you never imagined would be gone. And then, without you even realizing it, these pieces come back. New love enters, better friends come along, and a stronger, wiser you is staring back in the mirror. No matter how bad it gets, better days are always waiting, hoping you'll make it there to accept the smiles and joy that they're offering. And that is by an unknown author. Welcome to Tuesday's episode of the Toya Talks podcast, and we're calling this episode Judas. Every office has one, sometimes you have more than one, and sometimes it is everybody. Listen, I'm recording on a day that I never thought I'd record on, and a couple of things happened, and I was already doing a treatment for this episode, and then today lent itself to that particular episode. Anyway, you guys know I just stay on job, innit? Let's cut the shit. I stay on job. I keep telling everybody on this podcast episodes this year, towards the end of last year, this role that I'm working at is probably the single most difficult role I have ever had in my entire career. And I think it's because this is the most senior I've ever been in a role. I think it's because of the nature of this project. I think also because I am earning the most I have ever earned in my professional career. So the nuance of, you know, being senior, being black, being a woman, and working for this particular organisation all lends itself to a lot of the stress and a lot of the calling on my past experience. And I can't sit here and advise you guys how to navigate the world of work and not bring to the table my truth and things I've been through in the past, things I've learned, things I did amazingly well. And then in the present day, kind of what I'm dealing with, but also how I'm using all the lessons of my career to be able to navigate safely. So, you know, I keep telling everybody, whenever I'm talking about the world of work, the reason why I talk about white people so much, as we all know, is because white people are dominant in a lot of industries and organizations. They build the structures, they build the rules, they build everything that has been to benefit them. And as we are operating in their spaces are created for white people. But we're operating in their spaces because we've given them no choice but to have us, because we're best in class. We are the safe hands for the job. And if they're looking for best in class, then they found it with us, right? That's why we're here. And I always have said that keeping a job is a skill. And it's a skill that you develop. It's not a skill that you're going to learn in one job. In my 20s, I had so many jobs. I can't tell you how many jobs I had so many. And as I was having these jobs and I was learning how to navigate work and doing so successfully, I was developing the skills of holding on to jobs. The latter part of my 20s, I put those skills in motion, and I was, you know, whenever I wanted to leave somewhere, organizations would be asking me to stay. They'd be giving me more money to stay, you know, all those type of things, because I had understood and developed a unique way to navigate work and navigate in a way that I'm also climbing up that ladder, that career ladder as well. So I'm not just navigating on a flat structure, i.e. just surviving. I was also growing in my career. And I take it as a massive compliment when you resign and your boss either starts crying, has a breakdown, and they're offering and throwing things at you. Now, on one hand, they should have done that before I got to the point of leaving. But on the other hand, I also saw it as a huge confidence booster, because what it meant is that they see something, they know what my value is. They understand that I'm an asset. And whilst I get to decide and dictate where I end up, it's always nice to be wanted, right? I think, you know, it is what it is. I personally, on a personal level, I find navigating white spaces exhausting, because you are dealing with fragility. you are dealing with egotistical fucking dictators. You're dealing with the offspring of colonizers. The offspring of these colonizers have been indoctrinated to understand that they have been made to they've been raised to believe that they are in charge, in control, and they own and they take. That's how a lot of white people have been raised. So when we are working in workplaces, different industries, we see that dictatorship come through in the way managers manage, the micromanagement, in the way they bully, the use of micro and macro aggressions, and the tools of almost like psychologically attempting to break us down, because that is how white people operate in spaces where we exist. They want us to know that they can crush us. They want us to know that they get to decide our futures. And the whole reason why I've created Toya Talks is to say, actually, no, it's not going to operate like that. Not when we make the sacrifices to be above average. We're often exceptional. We as black women we know that we have to be best in class to even get an interview. That's just interview. So I'll be damned if we have to go over and above just to get an interview, over and above to be able to be seen as potential employees for certain roles, to then be oppressed to the point of just being crushed, whereby white people think that they can continue this dictatorship that they have been raised to believe is part and part of their customary culture. It's not going to fly with me. I know that this podcast, this platform, makes a lot of white people uncomfortable because some of them regularly tell me, they slide in my DMs, and when I take a screenshot of their DMs and send it back to them, I don't hear anything anymore. I refuse to speak to white people about race. I won't debate it. I won't have a conversation with white people about race, and I sure as hell will not enter a DM exchange with white people asking me to explain, demonstrate, give an example, or justify. I'm not doing it. I refuse. Because I can't, and we can't, be operating in their spaces as we navigate work. And then in my personal life, I'm still trying to operate my personal life in and amongst white people who think I need to justify my existence to them. I can tell you for one, that's not going to happen. I have no issue with working with white people. Oh, I don't think we can have an issue, right? Because we are outnumbered. But I do have an issue with how I work with them. The environment. Being able to actually do my job without feeling restricted. The reason I've called this episode Judas is because I put it here now, and I'll say it. I bet Judas was white. I do, because white people, especially in the world of work, they're not loyal to anybody. Each other more so, but outside of other fellow white people, they're not loyal to anyone. And I have many instances in my career where white people have done me dirty, especially earlier on in my career when I felt like we're all one human race. Yeah, and then I soon realised that I may think we're one human race, but the reality of the matter is racism is an intrinsic fabric of the way this society operates. The monarchy is an example of colonialism and the British Empire and how they have used, pillaged, stolen and extracted all that is good from Africa. So I can't now expect white people to be reasonable in how they operate in the world of work on a micro, macro level. I'm going to digress slightly and come back on topic, but I say digress, it's not really a digression though, is it? Is digression a word? Don't know, but if it isn't, I've created one. That race relations report that came out, I'm not going to read it. And people may say, but Toya, you should. But why should I? I know what the contents of that report is. I've heard the headlines where they say that racism, institutionalized racism doesn't exist. And actually, the UK are an example of, the utopia of race relations, which is bullshit. Why would I read that? Why? I know that, number one, it came out during the Easter break, because they knew there was going to be complete uproar, but they think that the Easter break will kind of smooth over any kind of tension that may have arisen from that report. Number two, I don't know if any of you read the Macpherson report in relation to the murder of Stephen Lawrence. If you really want to know what institutionalized racism is and how racism is an intrinsic fabric of society, go and read that. I'm not going to read this new report that has come out, this race relations report where they continuously gaslight black people. I'm not going to do it. Why would I put myself through that? And if I am going to read it, it will be when I am able to absorb it. But the way I look at it is, last year was so triggering for the black community. We were triggered daily, right? And was in a pandemic. And the continuous triggering of black people seems to be to the enjoyment of white people. And I'm not prepared to play into that. So I may never read that report. But as it stands at the moment, I'm not going to read that report because I already know what it says. I know what the headlines are. Therefore, I can hazard a guess at its page-turning content. And I think all it does is reinforce the fact that white people will continue to protect racism. They will continue to seek to use black people to do their dirty work for them, because we do have black people who may be skin folk but not kinfolk, who are happy to massage the egos of white people. And I am so far from that person, and I'm unwilling to ever pamper the egos of white people. I'm not doing it. I have not been created to the benefit of white people. That's not what's going to happen. I will operate in their spaces to get what I want, and I will continue to operate in their spaces to open the doors for fellow black women to enter. That's my job. But my job is not to pander and look for grace with white people who have never given black people any grace. You know, you go into Clubhouse and some of the conversations that I had, and white people are still centering themselves in the oppression Olympics that they want to participate in. I was in a room recently and a white woman said, you know, I'm an ally. How can I help you? And it's like, so you continuously still need black people to do something for you to be able for you to understand what you need to do. If you are an ally, why should I teach you how to be an ally? When you are in your white spaces, you should use your allyship. And I'm sick and tired of white people requesting and requiring education from black people. They want to make us relive a lot of the trauma so that we can educate them so they can go and be an ally. When a lot of white people witness a lot of the things, they're just unwilling to confront that it is their fellow white people that are operating in a racially violent way. And for me personally, you know, anyone that knows me, I have white friends. And I, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we have very healthy relationships, but they understand that I am operating from a space of wanting to, number one, be a voice, number two, speak on what needs to be spoken, and number three, I'm not here to protect any type of fragility. All my white friends, they have a level of fragility too. Yes, they do. Yes, they do, because they've lived a life of privilege. And now you're talking about race that makes them uncomfortable. You're talking about some of their ancestors who could or could not have been slave masters. I don't know. So I think for me, I have a very clear understanding as a black woman of what I've gone through and why I've gone through it, but equally why I had to create this platform. A lot of my non-black friends are so supportive. And the ones that haven't been, especially with the rising kind of feedback and the downloads that I've been getting, the ones that haven't been successful, I've just called them out and dropped them. You know, during the Black Lives Matter movement last year, I shared it with you guys, where one of my friends who was Chinese, she had an issue with supporting that movement. But yet, when there was a movement in her community, she wanted my support. And I had to tell her, it's not going to happen. It will not happen. I will not support you. You have never supported black women. And I can see that our friendship has been your passport to allowing you to sidestep your obligations as a human being and as a person. And I do want to explore that more in a podcast episode, kind of navigating friendships with non-Black people and how we operate as Black women with non-Black friends, and sometimes having those difficult conversations that only appear difficult because you haven't had them, but that means that they need to be had. So, and there will be an episode about that specifically, but we're talking about Judas right now. So at work, there is a really senior person, like second in command, and we are going to, all these names I'm coming up with, Cheese Louise, we're going to call him Judas. Let's just call him Judas because he is a Judas. And, you know, when I joined, he was very prickly, doesn't really talk to anyone. And the people he does talk to, you know, he makes it clear that, you know, he doesn't, it's almost like he comes across as not a nice person. He wants you to know that he's the boss, but he does it and it is this way that white people operate where it just feels so personal, even in silence, you know? And Judas is like this. And I don't know what it is about Judas, but something said to me, you know what? He's not a bad person. And there's a reason why he operates like this. We know that his ancestors, the colonizers, have been scrambling his brain, but I don't actually think that he is a bad person. If you know me, I work off energies. Like I know a bad person when I see one or I'm around one. I know somebody who is just no good. But this guy, there was just, I don't know, there's something, and he's an older guy. Like I'm talking about my dad's age here, but yeah, he's just so. You would just, I don't know, I just expected him, you can still be firm and all of that without having that undertone of nastiness. Do you know what I mean? And he's the type of person, he won't put time in your diary. He sees you're online on Teams and he'll just call you. And I got to understand that is the way he operates, and I need to set some boundaries. So what I do is when he calls me like that, I just don't pick up. And then he'll send me a message, say, Toy, I'm calling you. And I would message him and say, yeah, I'm on another call. Now he's learning to put calls in my diary. And he's had to earn the right to be able to just call me like that. So it's like a kid, isn't it? It's like I'm training him to understand how to operate with me. Okay? And I'm not going to sit here and lie. I think when somebody is in that position, like Judas is he is the deputy head of my entire department. And I say my department, a division of my department. It's serious, you understand? And when I was younger, I always used to be so scared of kind of challenging the status quo or speaking up or having any type of opinion that wasn't the collective opinion. And what happened is I ended up being really miserable. I ended up leaving roles. Every month I had a new job because I didn't understand that I had to develop the survival skills to navigate. And sometimes it requires you to just do your due diligence, as I've always said, but equally understand how you are operating in certain spaces. Now, in my 20s, if I had a platform like the Toya Talks platform, what it would have done is it would have pushed me into understanding and accepting that these spaces haven't been created for me. So if you know something hasn't been created for you, you make that space work for you, right? Because every space that white people create, there are holes in it, right? There are holes, i.e. when they create policies and they don't even remember what the policy is and then you use it against them. You are relying on their ignorance and their obsession with power to then use that same policy to defend yourself. And there's nothing they can do, you know? And this is what I try and teach. And I wish somebody had taken the time to teach me that rather than gratitude to be there and allowing white people to just use me like a football and kick me about. And the way I used to get treated, when I think about it, I get very angry. Very, very angry. You know, when I started working when I was 18, I was just treated so badly. And then as I developed, as I had made a lot of mistakes and as I hit, you know, roadblocks, I soon learnt that I needed to study white people. Where I work, everything that some of them do, I foresee it. Like one of my colleagues, and I've worked with her before in a past workplaces. I've told her, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and she will ring me and she says, Toy, exactly as you said, exactly how it's done. And it is exhausting to be doing that, but I'll say this to you. The characters of white people doesn't change from place to place. You just have to study them in one place. And wherever you go, they are an offspring of those people that you have studied. Because I'm not learning anything new about white people. Hello, let me help you. There is nothing new I'm learning about white people, apart from what I'm learning about myself and how I operate with them in their spaces. You know, I didn't realize I had certain characteristics that allowed me to navigate in quite the strategic way that I do. So Judas, anyway, as I was saying, as time has gone on, we've actually developed a very good relationship whereby he knows I'm going to deliver, but equally he understands that I sit in commercial. I look after the purse strings, I look after the contract, and I look after the commercial realities of the way we are operating in and amongst two of the most high profile contracts. Now, I didn't realise the contracts that I would be looking after would be so high profile within the organisation. What I mean by that is the senior heads of the organisation have a very close view of my contracts because, you know, they're high value, high risk. And to think that my boss really just lets me do what I want. And ordinarily in that situation, your boss wouldn't be too far removed from your contract, but my boss is removed enough from my contract because she trusts me. And that's a nice position to be in. I do have to add, and I've not really said this before, my boss is mixed race and she is, I would say she's black passing. When you see her, you would, I know she's mixed race because I can see it. And obviously our white counterparts see her as black. They do. And she is a very interesting character. And she is one of the best bosses I've had, but not for the reasons you may think. But I'm going to do a deep dive of her at the end of my contract. Because I've given you like little hit things here and there, like when I first started, you know, those of you who have followed, I've kind of shared that. But I think she is probably the most interesting manager I have ever had in my entire career. So I'm really looking forward to kind of deep dive in her character, how she's simulated and operated in these white spaces, and actually how she has used her influence and how she has used the fact that, and in my opinion, that she is mixed race. I think she's operated in a different way, and I think the struggles of mixed race people and black women, mixed race women and black people and black women are completely different. Our experiences are different, and white people know when somebody is mixed race and when they're black. They do, 100%. And as time goes on, I will share with you why I think that and give you the examples of my work experience where that has been something that has been polarized. Anyway, so Judas, always had a really good relationship, and now, you know, he knows if something happens on the contract, he knows to come to me. There are things that he has done which I have found out, and I have had to deal with in the most. I've had to deal with it's challenging, right? Because he's really senior. How do you tell a senior person you can't do that? You know, we're taught to tell seniors, or not even to tell seniors, just to let them run amok. But the buck also stops with me. And I understand that, you know, if he's doing something that affects my contract and I'm not managing it, that he gets a pass because he's white, he gets a pass because he's senior, but I don't get any passes. I get a complete fail. Do you understand? And that can weigh quite heavily. But if you already know where you sit, and if you already know how you're going to operate and why you're going to operate in a certain way, I think it helps deal with the responsibility of interacting with senior stakeholders. And I think the skill of navigating senior stakeholders is one that honestly I have learned through my career. And again, I will do an episode on senior stakeholders, because when we talk about senior, it's one level up from your manager, your line manager. Because remembering that when we talk about seniority, we're also talking about power. And it's important to understand how senior members of staff or senior stakeholders use their power, and understanding as well what drives them and what makes them operate in the way that they do. Anyway, So Judas, always had a good relationship. He does do some weird stuff in terms of he knows that he needs to come to me for certain things, but he'll go ahead and make decisions because obviously fucking dictator. And he has people that sit in his team that sit beneath him, right? And I hate the word beneath, but you know what I mean. Like maybe they are directors, but not as senior directors as Judas. Anyway, and I have a really great relationship with them. Now, part of my role as commercial contract manager is also managing the supplier relationship as well. I'm not a supply relationship manager, but you find that if you're a contract manager or a commercial contract manager, commercial contract consultant, all the same things, by the way, you at some point will have to manage relationships with your internal stakeholders, external stakeholders who are your suppliers, and senior stakeholders who maybe have a bit more power and influence. So my internal stakeholders are quite whingy, and they are separated into different teams. Now, I get on with my internal stakeholders fabulously well. They come to me for stuff. They know I'm going to get stuff done. They understand that, you know, if I can't do something, I just can't. But they help me manage my contract in a way, because then I'm managing my suppliers. And for the last couple of weeks, they've been coming to me with like quite serious issues about my supplier. But whenever I have supplier meetings, my supplier is always scoring really high when we do like a review of their performance. So for me, there is a disconnect between my supplier, who, you know, is telling me that their performance is like 100%, but then my stakeholders are telling me something different. Now, you've got to remember, my stakeholders, even though they interact with the supplier on a daily, that relationship has to be... It has to be a good relationship. I'm the one that has to have the difficult conversations. And I don't mind doing that. That's part and parcel of what I do. Anyway, so it's all come to a head, right? And internal stakeholders now are so like annoyed. Things are not working. Things are not operating. And I've been monitoring this for a few weeks. And I made the decision that I'm going to have a formal meeting with my supplier, send out a formal comms, because there are serious issues now. Now, one thing with me is, irrespective in my career of what I think of my manager, it's if I don't respect my manager, I respect their position. And this is what I said to you at the end of the year. We're going to talk about my manager. We're going to talk about dealing with managers, senior management. I'm going to leave you with this on this topic. You need to respect the position that your manager is in. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because one day you may be in that position. You don't have to respect them. You have to respect their position. Because you know, if you're able to respect their position, you're able to understand where your position is in comparison to theirs, and how you will operate to respect their position. It's really, really important. Especially because people know when you don't like them. People know, they have a feeling, right? But if you respect their position, it causes people to take a step back and inadvertently respect you. That's how I operate. God's so kind with my boss. I do respect her as a person, and I do actually like her, despite some questionable things that she does. But I really respect her position. I respect her position because she is a manager. She is my manager. She's my divisional manager. And I respect that. Then on a granular level, I respect her because she's a woman. And I respect her because she is a mixed race woman operating in a very, very white, male, schoolboy dominated industry. Do you understand? So I called my boss and I said, Deborah, I've been monitoring this for a few weeks, and this is my commercial view. This is what I want to do. And I need to understand, number one, if you are happy for me to do this, but also as well, if there is any guidance that you can give me. Maybe I haven't covered all areas. And you should have heard my boss. You know, her inflatable shoulders were high. You could feel it, you know, because in her head, this is the first time she's hearing it. She's got such an arm's length approach to everyone in my team. And she likes it like that, because She's very hierarchical. So she's very, very, with her directors at the top, she's very pally. But with us, she's not really like that. And we're senior, but not senior enough for her to feel like she needs to be close. And that works for me really, really well, because micromanagement and my personality does not operate in the same space. So her management style really, really works for me. And even more so because we're remote. So she said to me, Toya, everything you've said here is the reason why I had to fight for you to stay when you wanted to leave. Everything you said, I 100% support. You have my backing. I said, no problem. Now, I want you to understand something before I continue the story. I have an episode called Allegiances and Alliances. I know a lot of people talk about, building a relationship, being best friends with your this, and I don't believe in all of that shit. You build strategic alliances, you build strategic allegiances, but you are only aligned and you are already, you have to be loyal to yourself. These people will drop you like a hot plate of hot food. They will drop you so quick. These are the same people that when there's redundancies, they don't care how many office drinks you've had, how many laughters and a chit chat you've had, how many things you've agreed on. If somebody's being made redundant, they'll happily drop you in it. Do you understand? So that shows you that the loyalty that you owe yourself has to be greater than the loyalty that you offer anybody you work with, irrespective of their position. And it's really important I say this, because when I gave you the strategy that I use in allegiances and alliances and how I use them to my advantage, I also talk about dealing with your career as a project, understanding what your goals are. And sometimes when you're in the throes of work, I get it. Sometimes you just want to be working. You don't want to have to be weighed down with strategy and kind of operating in that way. But as Black people, we have to operate in a very, very different way. Purely for the fact of racism, oppression, macro aggressions, and the white violence that is tabled before us daily. So we owe it to ourselves to not only be loyal to ourselves, but to understand that every day is us working through our project strategy of survival, navigating, and operating. So I sent out an email, and in that email, all the senior heads were on copy. That email went to my supplier. The email had evidence of failings, and that's one thing with me. I've studied white people. I know how they write. If you read my emails that I send, you know that, I really have spent time with my career. I've really, understood. I've really learned from white people. I learned how they put emails together. Some of them will write an email. The email will be so sexy, but they're telling the person to fuck off. I learned all those things. There are some managers that have been the worst managers ever, but the type of email they'll send, you will just marvel. You'll just be like, wow. Because white people know how they speak. I don't speak like them. I'm from the hood. But I've had to learn to assimilate the way I operate to get to where I am now. I've had to learn that. And it hasn't been about changing who I am. It hasn't been about being a shadow of myself. It has been by being who I am, but taking the positives that I see in how white people interact with other white people to get what they want without having to be difficult, or still being difficult, but doing it in such a polite way. Have you heard white people argue? It's uncomfortable. It's like, are you really trying to say fuck off, but you're not saying the words? Why are you blinking so much? Are you a serial killer? They don't argue. White people are not taught to express emotion properly and positively. They're not. They do it and that's why racism is so violently covert, because white people don't know, for them, it's easier to work in the shadows. They don't understand that. Well, no, they understand what overt racism is. They understand also its limitations. So if you use our American counterparts, you'll go into a shop and a white person will use the N-word, they'll do all of that. White people, they do that here, but they don't. That's not their go-to. That's not how they operate. They operate, it's pervasive, it's covert. It's such a way that you can't quite pinpoint it, but we know it is it. and then they gaslight us. Do you understand? So understanding the language they use, how they talk. There was something that my dad used to say to me when I was younger. I had a teacher called Mr. Parnham when I was in sixth form college, and my dad said, you need to talk like Mr. Parnham. And my dad used to like literally do it like this. You need to talk like Mr. Parnham with all that good English that he tries to use, so that when you're ready to operate around white people, you know how to talk like them. They won't see you coming. That's what my dad used to do, like say it to me, and we would laugh, ha ha ha. But I think about it now, and that was actually really good advice. I.e., learn how white people operate with each other. Take the things from it. Take the nucleus out of it. And assimilate that into how you as a black woman operate with them in their white structures. The email that I sent, was sexy. It was a sexy email. And I had evidence, attached evidence. And that's one thing with me. If I'm going to say something, I'm going to back it up. I never use emotion. I've told you guys this. Never. I never send emails when I'm angry. I never operate from a space of anger when I'm interacting with white people. I don't, because they are so hung up on the emotional side. And remember, they don't even see any emotion when it comes to us. So they see it as aggression. So if I remove that out of it and I deal with you how you deal with each other, then you can't tell me nothing. So send the email, didn't hear anything. And I didn't realise that I hadn't logged off my laptop. So today, my laptop, Teams started ringing like somebody was calling me. And it was Judas. And I was thinking, so I didn't pick it up, and I thought, why is he calling me? He knows I'm off work because my out of office is on. So this must be urgent. So I thought, more fool me. I should have switched off my laptop, and then I wouldn't even know that Judas was trying to contact me. Now, because Judas is so senior, I thought, okay, this must be serious. So called him back. Said, hey Judas, how are you? He said, oh, I'm fine, Toya, how are you? I said, I'm good. I said, it's my day off, but I saw that you called me, so I figured it was urgent. He said, oh, that email that you sent, why did you send it? I said, because it needed to be sent. Now, remember, he has never, ever, ever interacted like that with me before. It was confrontational and it was aggressive. He wanted me to see that everything I was saying, he was writing down. No problem. He said, oh, because with this supplier, this stakeholder, this external stakeholder you're dealing with, I'm working on a project with them. So your email has made that project difficult. These issues that you've said, where did you get these issues from? I said, your team. He said, pardon? I said, yeah, there's been a very serious complaint made by somebody. And he was like, I didn't know about that complaint. I said, well, you should know. I says, that's not for me to tell you. He says, yeah, but you're getting involved in strategic matters. I says, no, I'm not. But your strategic matters are actually affecting my contract. So actually, your team coming to me was the right thing for them to do. I meet with them once a week so that I can go through the commercial realities of what's happening on the ground. And then I can have that difficult conversation and messaging with the supplier. I said, I've been doing this for 8 years. So I understand where I sit. And I sit as a commercial contract consultant, and I am consulting. He said, well, that's not your job. I said, well, it is my job, actually. I said, I could never tell you what your job is because you're really, really good at your job, but I'm really good at mine. If I had anything to hide, I wouldn't have put you on copy to the email to the supplier. I put you on copy. I put some of the other directors on copy, and my boss is on copy. And I had a conversation with my boss before I sent that email. So she's very well versed in the reasons why. And I put it to you that the things that were said in that email are all commercial issues that have derived from strategic things that you're doing. He said, well, that's not your call to make. I said, it is my call to make. And he went quiet. He said, well, why hasn't my team told me? I said, I don't sit in your team. I couldn't tell you. But I can tell you that I've told my boss, and I've had extensive conversation with my boss. And actually, she's very well aware of how we have gotten to this stage with this particular supplier. And my boss would expect that if you were to pick up the phone, you would know that she knows everything. So I think maybe that's something that you need to take up with your team in the way that they escalate things to you so that they don't actually reach me. But at the point when it reaches me, they're looking for help. They're looking for how I can use my commercial contract management skills, the actual contract, to be able to support them as I have always supported you. And then he was like, well, what I'm not trying to do is make things difficult, but I can see that, there's been a breakdown of communication. I said, yeah, not by myself. I've communicated quite effectively. I says, the learning lesson that I will take from here is in the same breath that I spoke to my boss before I sent this email, I will now speak to you before I send emails of this severity to the supplier, because I now realize that your team doesn't speak to you. So in making the assumption that they did and that you knew about this, I sent this email and put you on copy. But I understand that you feel blindsided, but I put it to you that you feel blindsided by your team, because I can effectively communicate with you. But in this situation, this was commercial. So the person that needs to be spoken to was my director, and that's what I did. When you use English, the English language, to pour cold water on people, you will see them scurrying. Like, have you ever seen a cockroach scurrying when you walk into a room? Yeah. I told you I grew up in the hood. Yeah. I saw a lot of cockroaches. This is how Oyobo people operate. When you back them in a corner, when they're coming with their knives and they're coming with their batons, and you just say, I've only got a spear. How do you want to do this? Don't get it twisted. When I was speaking to him, there was this thing on the left side of my shoulder, imaginary by the way, that was like, Toya, this could go really, really bad. But there was this on the other side of me saying, you are in the right, and you are not going to allow yourself to be pushed around by a white man that's basically telling you how to do your job, because he doesn't effectively do his job as a director to manage his team. He must be so embarrassed that his team don't even trust him to be a director and to be directing, that they don't even come to him. They come to me. And his ego is bruised, because the first time he's seeing any issue is the email to the supplier with him on copy. But the reality is I've got nothing to hide. But what you cannot do, Toya, is back down. No backing down. And you could see towards the end of the call, he looked embarrassed. And let me tell you something. This whole exchange, my camera was off, because I do not work today. I'm not working today. You got my out of office, so you rang me anyway. Don't expect to put my camera on. I'm not going to afford you that respect, because you didn't afford me that respect when you rang me anyway. I was eloquent, and I'm going to tell you what I was, because you know me, I tell you guys the truth. I was eloquent, I was direct, I was honest, and I was respectful in that order. I said to him, so at the end, to draw the call to a close, I said to him, I'm planning to have an internal call with all the senior heads to discuss these issues. And whilst you have a strategic plan with this supplier, I think it's important that you understand what's happening in terms of the delivery of this contract. And this may feed into your strategic plan. In fact, we may be able to build some mechanisms to make sure that your project is delivered correctly by working through the issues that we currently have, so that they're not a domino effect to your project with the supplier. And you could see he felt stupid, dumb and stupid. He said, Toya, we've always gotten on very well, but I appreciate you having this conversation with me. Thank you so much. Do you know that this is a man I've never had any issues with, but he's coming at me like he's fighting me. Do you know, I rang my boss because something in my spirit said to me, ring her. When I called her, she said, Toya, why are you working today? This is your day off. I said, don't worry. She says, Judas called me. I said, what? She goes, yeah. Before he sent you the email, because he said, so when I sent the email to the supplier, he called me, I missed his call, he emailed me. So then I just called him back. I didn't even know he sent the email. So when he sent the email, he had called my boss. So at the time he called my boss, he hadn't spoken to me. That conversation hadn't happened. So when that conversation happened and I then called my boss is like, yeah, he called me. He said, do you know what my boss said to me? She says, Toya, this is a man that I've watched you over and above with certain projects for him to get things over the line. And you've saved, and this is her words, you've saved his bacon so many times, I can't even put a number in it. So when he called me and he tried to trash talk you, I wasn't going to have it. Because you had fully briefed me, as you always do. She said, Toya, anytime there is something that you know that will affect me in certain conversations in rooms that you're not in, you always brief me. So when I go into those rooms, no matter what is said, I have to have your back because I know. I know what's going on. You don't hide anything from me. She goes, it's not like you're trying to take my job. That's what my boss said. She goes, but what I'm going to tell you is, with that man, you have to be careful and continue to do what you're doing, everything in writing. So this man that was coming to fight me, not one point did he tell me he'd spoken to my boss. Nothing. This is how white people operate to set up black people in the office. They will go and sow seeds. They will go collectively group people and they will then get you out. But what this man doesn't realize is, I've got him. Like, I've been watching him. Listen, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm still going to tell you that he's a nice man. Oh. He is. Because that's how he operates and assimilates in interacting with me. He uses the nice guy. Oh, he's not nice to other people. He's just nice to Toya. Bullshit. He is a devil. A walking, talking, ugly devil is what that man is. He's a Judas. Because you think that you two are cool. You're operating well. This is your one of the divisional directors. Oh, Toya, thank you so much. This was amazing. What would I do without you? You would then be carrying shoulders. Not knowing that the next day they're having meetings in rooms that you're not in. And they're trying to dig a hole for you. Go and listen to the episode Allegiances and Alliances from the first season of the Toy Talks podcast. If you are listening to this episode, go and immediately go there and listen to it. Do you think that I think that my boss is my pal? She's not my pal. But I understand that she wields a level of influence in rooms I am not in by virtue of my position in the organization. My boss needs to feel and know that I respect her position. Do you understand? Okay, let me give you an example. In my organisation, they sent me an email. They said, we know you're a contractor. However, because of the seniority level you are in your team, we need to give you delegated authority to sign contracts to a certain value. And we're talking millions here. They said, can I come back to them and sign the attached form and come back to them? I sent my boss an email. I said, Deborah, please find below and attached. I'm not sure that you're aware. I assume you're not aware of this because you're not on copy. And I would love your guidance and to understand if you're comfortable with this. Do you know this woman wrote back to me? She says, Toya, thank you so much for sending me this email. I had no clue about this. Can you call me? I called her. I said to her, listen, anything you want me to do with this delegated authority, I'm willing to do. But what I'm not going to do is have more signing power than, say, you, or sign things behind your back. I want you to be fully aware that, what my position is. And my position is, what would you like me to do with this delegated authority? Do you know what she said to me? She said, Toya, I know that you will never sign anything or approve anything without putting it through me. And that alone tells me that I'm very comfortable for you to have this delegated authority. She goes, thank you so much for letting me know that this is something that the organisation were giving you, because you could have signed this, I'd never know. But you made sure that I was aware of it, and I appreciate it. And that's the reason why I want you to have it, because I know that you will never do anything behind my back. That's what my boss said. I'm respecting her position. And when I'm respecting her position, she's understanding that, number one, I'm not a threat to her job. I'm not a threat to her job, and I'm not a threat to her in the team. I've understood how my boss operates, and what I've done is I have aligned myself with her to get what I want. Let me tell you what I want from this contract. I just want to get to the end of my contract and I want to get paid. And I've now developed another skill working in this particular industry. This industry I've never worked in before. Obviously, I've been a commercial contract consultant, stroke manager for about 8 years now. So it means that I'm able to use those skills and use those transferable skills in this particular arena. And when I spoke to my boss about the conversation with Judas, before I could finish, do you know what she said to me? She said, I had your back because you told me what was happening. There was nothing to blindside me. Toya, I don't use your name and the word blindside in the same sentence because that doesn't happen. The regular BAU you deal with, some things I will never hear about it. And then when I do hear about them, I hear only glowing reports that you've already resolved them, sorted them, or whatever you had to do. So when you ring me, I know it's something serious because I don't talk to you. She goes, Toya, if I don't put the time in your diary, you will not put the time in mine because you're just happy to get on with things. And that's what I like about you. I don't have to worry about you. So this situation with Judas, I fully support you. Whatever you want me to do next, I'm prepared to do it. Now, that is how you build an alliance. Do you understand? Now, I didn't badmouth Judas. I wasn't disrespectful about him, but I was clear to her about what I was doing. Judas has to operate like that because white people in the workplace operate like Judas. They are loyal to nobody, even each other. They're loyal to a point. And it's very isolating as a black woman in white dominated spaces. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I don't think I've given that enough grace. It is isolating. And even more so because we're remote working. So I want the Toy Talks platform and podcast to be a comfort to you that you're not alone. Those of you who have been following the Toy Talks platform way back when, you know how we started on Snapchat, where every morning I would walk to the station and I'll be snapping. Every evening on my way back from work, I'd be Snapchatting. Even if I was, at the time I was studying, I was doing my procurement and supply diploma. 10, 11 o'clock at night, I'd be walking back, telling you about my day, how I have navigated, what work has been like for me, how difficult work was for me. I even remember telling you guys about that time when I was working and a senior manager threw some paper at me because they weren't happy with my commercial review of something. So you know how we started. Like, I'm not coming from a position of any type of advantage. Like, I am like you are me. But if I am able to navigate successfully, and I'm sitting here telling you at the age of 36, I've really hit a point in my career that I never even thought I could, first of all. But and also financially, anyone from any walk of life, background can do it. And as black women, the uniqueness in how we have to operate means that Toya Talks platform is ours. It's for black women, to black women, about black women. Guide, educate, assist and advise black women how to navigate the world of work safely. What do I mean by safely? Well, what I mean by that is safely navigate without having to change who we are, without having to compromise who we are, without having to play into the stereotypes that white people have about us. Safely, without having to step on anyone, and I mean anyone, to get to where we want to go. I've never, ever in my entire career stepped on anyone to get to anything. What is meant for me will come to me. What is meant for me is mine. But I do understand that it is isolating. It's difficult. I didn't want to have that conversation with Judas. It was aggressive in nature. It was confrontational because that was the energy he met me with. He wanted to come to me with that energy because he wanted to swing his big dick energy around. You know, short men as well. That's how they operate. He's short. I know he's short because his chair is flat. Like, you know, his chair is positioned in such a way that I know this man is short. I remember when he was leaning one time, I was like, brother, yeah, shutty. Me, I'm a short woman, don't get it twisted. But white short men, anyway, short men scare me in general, irrespective of race and background. But white short men, it's a different energy. That Napoleon complex that they have, I'm just not here for it. But sometimes we have to stand our ground. And we have to stand our ground because if we don't, that could be a prelude to us no longer being at an organisation. There has to come a time where you understand how to stand your ground strategically. In that situation with Judas, I stood my ground strategically. This man tried to tell me what my job was. Do you know how disrespectful it is to tell somebody their job? Even the email I sent to the supplier, the word commercial was all over it. There was nothing that leaned itself to another division, i.e. the division that Judas manages. None. He was just blindsided because the white man wasn't in control of all the information. Well, it's not my fault that your team don't trust you enough, to be honest with you. Or maybe they're just scared of you. His team are probably just scared of him. I'm not scared of him. I see how he interacts with people. Like there's a white guy in my team called Michael, and he's very passive. You know, some people, everyone's got different personalities. He's very passive. Anytime Judas speaks to him, the way he bends his head down, like with reverence, it's like nods his head. It doesn't give him eye contact. That's somebody who's probably also been crushed by him in meetings, humiliated. So it's easier to play the nodding dog. As black women, I don't think we are afforded the opportunity to be anyone's nodding anything. You can still have a passive personality, but when it comes to asserting yourself in situations, you need to be present, because you will not see success if you're unwilling to be present and you're unwilling to sometimes stand your ground. It's just the way you do it. It's the way you do it. And it's very, very complex navigating the moods of white people that seems to be so erratic. But I will never ever overlook the complexities of often navigating the world of work remotely, especially if you've started somewhere remote. And in my case, that's the case, right? I started this contract remote, so I only have remote relationships. If I was to see these people in person, I don't think I'd recognize them, because I'm not attributing other features to them, like their hands or kind of how you know, their body languages. I can't attribute that to them, because what we do with body languages, we attribute it to character. So for instance, I speak with my hands, whereas some people may not. So when you see people in life, you're like, okay, I recognize the voice. I think I recognize the face, because obviously remote working. But it is difficult. And I do talk about that in the interview masterclass about remote interviewing and stuff like that, and some of the cues that, you know, you need to be aware of. But I'm not overlooking the complexities of starting a workplace, being remote, or where you've never been remote before and now you're operating in a remote space with colleagues who maybe you were face to face with, and you know, it was easier to operate in that way. But I'm hoping what the pandemic is teaching us is the need for flexibility and understanding that things are not always going to go your way, and you have to sometimes make good of a bad situation. I think, you know, whenever I think about kind of being done over, it's not even done over, but Judas, I will never forget a time in my early 20s, naive, thinking that justice really meant justice, thinking that, you know, oh, you know, if I do everything the way it's supposed to be done, they're just going to side with me. I remember I was an admin assistant in a particular organisation, and basically I was treated really badly by one of the team managers, and I made a complaint because they had done something, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just remember that it was in front of everybody, and the complaint I made was so emotional. I felt, and I even wrote there, emotionally drained, you know, all those provocative words. And I'm writing this to HR, who are all white, and we know white people don't attribute emotion to us. So I'm writing all this stuff, and it's probably just going over their head. So in the complaint, I wrote down my witnesses, and I'd gone to them and I said, you witnessed this, right? Are you willing to be my witness in my complaint? And they're like, yeah. So I put this complaint in, then I was called for a meeting. And I went in the meeting and they wouldn't let me speak, right? They spoke over me, or they shot me down, but they wouldn't let me speak, to a point where they ground me down. And then they had 2 witness statements from the people that I had said were my witnesses. And if you read this witness statement, they basically said that they felt that I was the one that was being difficult, and that they felt that I exacerbated the situation. When you have a manager that takes joy out of humiliating you in front of a team, but there was something specifically that manager did that caused me to make the complaint, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But I do know that what happened before that was constant humiliation, shouting down. I remember there was one time when there was two, there was a man and a woman, but specifically the woman slammed her hand on the desk, and it was just awful. But this was when I was ignorant, I was young, and to be quite honest with you, I had a fantasy way of looking at world of work. I saw work, you just carry your briefcase and your shoes that make noise on the ground. You know, I never understood the realities of working in white spaces. In fact, I didn't think there were white spaces. I just thought that was work. That was a workspace. I didn't understand the nuance of race and how race relations operates in workplaces. I wasn't educated with that. My parents taught me that you work, you get paid, and you just put up, you shut up. And if you challenge, just understand that it won't go your way. Who said it wouldn't go my way? It only wouldn't go your way if you don't use the tools that white people have put in place against them. If you don't use the tools against them, of course, you know, you're never going to survive in white spaces. And then they made work so difficult for me. And then I ended up being put on performance review. And then I just left. And I remember going back into work, you know, being put on the performance review. And these white people would stand and smile in your face and deny. I even confronted one of them. She denied it. I said, how can you deny it? I read it. You signed it. I saw it. Like, what the hell? Then she accused me of bullying her and being intimidating. And then I was banned from talking about it. It was just horrific. But that was me not operating in a strategic way. That was me operating from a place of emotion. That was me completely not understanding the world of work and thinking that white people will ever be your allies in a workplace. You're fucking mad. I don't believe in that. I've never met white allies in the world of work. Maybe some of you have, and that's great. But remember what I say about allies in that episode of Allegiances and Allies. You need to be careful. White people are not your allies. They are working in what benefits them. You can build... The allyship that you're building is very loose. But don't ever think that they're the type of allies that will go and bat for you, because that's not what it is. Sometimes you have to build allies with their influence, not necessarily with them. And it's understanding that. I'm not sitting here saying you can never build allies. That's not exactly what I'm saying. What I'm actually saying to you is understand who your allies are, but how to use their influence, because that's what you're aligning yourself with, their influence. Likeability and all of that requires personable relationship with these white people that will just use your personal life against you. How many of you have written into me telling me that your boss was following you on social media and all of this, and then you're on gross misconduct from the same social media that they're following you at? Be careful. This Judas in my workplace, I'm not going to lie to you. When he brought that aggressive energy, I couldn't even be shocked, because that is how white people are. They want you to know that they're the boss. He tried to bully and intimidate me, and I wasn't backing down. Respectfully, I wasn't backing down. Do you know what it feels like when somebody knows you're off work but they call you anyway? Then he came there with his Poindexter glasses, his bold patch on his head, and his fucking big biro pen to come and write down everything I'm saying. I don't give a fuck. Write what you like. I'm not stupid. When we have an internal meeting with him and my boss and whatever to talk about kind of the issues with the supplier, I know my boss is not going to bat for me the way I want her to bat for me. She'll bat for me insofar as it serves her. Of course she'll bat for me insofar as it serves her. And it serves her in this instance to agree, because of the massive complaint that was made against the supplier. So she needs to align herself with me, because she knows I've done a deep dive commercial analysis and it doesn't look good. So she needs to align herself with me, because she knows that I've done what I need to do to protect us commercially. Do you understand? That's the strategy. So I know my boss we're good, we've got a great relationship, but I know that it's only so far as it serves her. And the only thing we have in common is that she's mixed race and I'm black. So that's maybe, how, there's certain things that she says that lends itself to a level of I'm familiar with your blackness type thing. But at the end of the day, babes, you are a director on a level that in a room that I'm never in. I don't know what you're saying about me in them rooms. And the only person I can trust and the only person I can be loyal to is myself. So I will continue to build these strategic alliances insofar as their influence serves me. I understand that just because a boss is begging me to stay because I want to leave, it serves her for me to stay, because who else is she going to trust the way she trusts me to look after these high profile strategic contracts? I serve a purpose. My question to you is, what purpose do you serve to senior management or senior members? And that purpose you serve, that is your leverage. How are you going to make that work for you? How are you going to stand your ground in the most respectful, strategic way? How are you going to utilize your burn folders to protect you? How are you going to be a subject matter expert and a safe pair of hands that lends itself to leverage when you need to have difficult conversations, when you need to talk about money, when you need to talk about progression? What is your project plan with your job? Are you dealing with your job like it's a project? If it is, if you are dealing with your job like it's a project, what's the next step? What have you been able to obtain? And it's also about knowing when it's time to move on. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Listen, it is very cathartic to be able to also talk about kind of some of the things that are happening in my current contract as well. I definitely feel like this podcast lends itself to all of us, right? As we navigate the world of work. And it's about navigating in a way that serves us as Black women to get what we want. And I always say that I'm not here to sell you fantasy. I give you practical tools. Even how I told you I interacted with Judas and how I've utilized my relationship with my manager and things like that. Take the lessons. Take the lessons. Learn from what I have done, what I'm going through, what I've done well. Take those things and use them so that you can attain success, so that you can navigate safely and light up the path of your success. Before I draw this episode of the Toy Talks podcast to a close, we have a few dilemmas, but there's one in particular I want to quickly read and advise on, because I think it's really, really important, quite pertinent to where we are in the world of work and the commercial space. So here goes.
Hi Toya, hope you are well. I'm a bit stuck as I've received a work contract moving internally to a new role. I had specifically asked for flexible working in the application form, as well as to both hiring manager and HR. They both said it was feasible and the company encourages flexible working. However, when I received the contract, there was no mention of flexible working. It was simply Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I queried this with the hiring manager and HR and got a response. The hiring manager is happy for you to work flexibly to suit work-home parent balance. My question to you is, how can I make sure this is included in the contract, or can I take the email as confirmation? My other worry is the new manager is on a 1 year's contract. If management changes in a year's time, where does that leave my right to flexible working being protected? Looking forward to some advice. Kind regards. Now, I think that this is a really, really, really important dilemma. She's highlighted, this Black Queen has highlighted some really key points that in her application form for this internal role within her current organisation, she was very clear in stipulating that she wanted flexible working, and she's, provided the reason, i.e., work from home, parent balance. She's also said that, Toya, this is what the manager has agreed over email, but if the manager was to change or management was to change, then where would that leave her? She's also identified that Monday to Friday 9 to 5 in the contract does not have any flexibility. So my advice to you is to put it in writing to HR and your line manager, and actually be honest. There's nothing that you've said here that isn't a justifiable reason why, number one, you would ask for clear flexibility within the contract, but two, the fact that your current manager is on a year's contract tells me that you're in a vulnerable position. If you accept the contract as is, you need flexible working. It's a non-negotiable for you. And I think you need to say it. So I would send an email to the effect of, dear hiring manager, and you'd obviously write their name, and dear line manager, thank you for the confirmation of the role via the employment contract. However, even though we have you have confirmed flexibility in my working, bearing in mind wanting to have the flexibility as a parent as well, and with work, the fact is contractually there is no flexibility in this contract, and there's no reference to any flexibility. This is a side agreement that has no legal comfort for me in terms of this employment contract. A role that is Monday to Friday 9 to 5 is not flexible in nature, and therefore if you are agreeing flexible working, there should be no reason that should stop you from putting that in the contract. I would suggest that this is either put into the employment contract or appended to the employment contract to agree what that flexibility entails. However, as the contract currently stands, if I was to sign it, I'm signing away the ability to amend it later on, and therefore accepting the inflexible nature of the current contract as it stands at the moment, Monday to Friday 9 to 5. I hope you would understand my position, understanding also that when I applied for this job internally, I made it very clear within the application that flexibility was a requirement for me to be able to take this role. Therefore, I would I hope that you would find it agreeable to add that flexibility within the contract. Kind regards. And you would then put it on them. But I wouldn't sign that contract as it stands, because if you sign that contract as it stands, number one, forget for a moment your manager leaving, but your manager could turn around and say, yeah, I know I agreed flexibility, but yeah, we can't do that anymore. You know, this whole episode is called Judas. It's quite pertinent because, Oyibo people, I'm so sorry. I do not trust white people. I don't trust them. I'm so sorry. I just don't. I don't trust them. And I do not trust them in business, and I do not trust them in the world of work. My contracts are ironclad. Ironclad. If you agree something in an email, then you could agree something in a contract. What is the difference? The difference is in an email, it's like a friendly handshake. In a contract, it's legally binding. I'm protected by the legal clauses within my contract. You've agreed to a variation of the standard contract that is Monday to Friday 9 to 5, insofar as now we're making it flexible to accommodate a work-life balance. And to be quite honest with you, any employer that is giving you a contract that's Monday to Friday 9 to 5, but on the side you have agreed to flexible working, you better prepare yourself for the fact that that manager could and would probably change their mind. New managers could come in. Organisations could get HR to change policies so that it makes it difficult for you to enforce something that was agreed in an email. An email is not legally binding. It's persuasive, but it's not legally binding. And I think that if we take the premise of this entire episode in terms of Judas, there is no way you could reasonably sign a contract Monday to Friday 9 to 5 on the email confirmation that your new role within the organisation will be flexible. And I think you know that. That's why you've emailed and asked me. So I hope that helps you. And please email me back and let me know how it works out for you, because if they've agreed to flexible working, they've offered you the role on that basis of flexible working, and I say on that basis because your application form, it forms the basis of them offering you a role as well as the internal interview you had, then I see no problem in them putting it into your contract. It's not difficult. Their reluctance to put it into your contract would be even more reason why I would make sure it goes in. And that is from an employment perspective, that is from a contractual perspective, and that is from just understanding how white people operate and making sure that you are protecting yourself. So I want to thank you, Black Queen, for writing in and being so candid and so honest, and also enabling me to share that on this platform, and share your dilemma on this platform, so other people who are in similar situations, or those people who may find themselves in situations like this, are able to be helped by this dilemma. And it's really, really important that we protect ourselves. I say this all the time. You know, I know that a lot of people may find my views quite uncomfortable or shocking, but believe me, I have worked with white people, and I've worked with different characters, and there's good and bad in every race, but we're talking about white constructs dominated by white people to benefit white people. So there is not much that benefits us. We have to almost fight for everything. This black queen has been promised one thing, and now she's having to get them to put it, what they've promised, in a contract, and they're making it difficult by actually having an exchange about it. It's far easier to just put it in. If you stand by what you've agreed, put it in a contract. Formalize it. Emails are informal. I'm sorry. It's like someone saying, emailing me, saying, Toya, don't worry what your contract says. Instead of having lunch for 15 minutes, you can have it for an hour. And then that manager leaves, and then I have lunch for an hour. Where are you? Your contract says you have to have your lunch. Your lunch break is only 15 minutes. Do you understand? Like, I feel like white people don't honour stuff that you can't hold them accountable for. White people do not honour things that you cannot hold them accountable for. And this is why I say, like, about using their policies against them. Some of them don't even know what's contained in these policies. When they're writing them with anger and vengeance. They don't know what's in it. So when you use the same policy against them, they get shocked. You are the author. You guys wrote it. You know? And I think in making sure that, you know, you put things in a contract, like flexible working, you save yourself the stress down the line of having to get white people to stick to what they say. That's on period. I also want to, before I draw the episode to a close, I do want to mention something, because I don't really go in too deep earlier on in the episode. You know, when I think about how I was in my 20s, if Judas had interacted with me in the way that he did in my 20s, that would have crushed me a little bit. It would have really kind of kicked and chipped away at my self-confidence. Imagine somebody who is a really senior position than you, basically questioning your job. And when you say, but that's not your job, why are you doing that? Who told you to do that? That's not your job. You think to yourself, you start questioning yourself. Am I doing, and it makes you second guess yourself. And white people are very good at that. It's like they get into your head to make you question whether you should even be there. And that's partly because of their insecurities. They don't want us to be there, but we're there. So they get us to question ourselves so that we depend on them for confirmation that we deserve to be where we are. And that, as far as I'm concerned, it is based on bullying. It's based on it's based on control. And when white people feel like they cannot control or they're losing control, they become verbally violent. They become often as well quite aggressive. We're talking about a senior member of staff. He's probably like my dad's age, right? This man is so close to the screen as he's talking to me. The man is literally headbutting the screen just to show me how angry he is at my email. That was not disrespectful. It was nothing other than me doing my commercial job and my commercial due diligence. This man is shouting down the screen. This man is being intimidating, attempting to intimidate me. You can't intimidate me. I promise you that when I close my eyes and think about it, the reason why I get so angry is because Toya in her 20s would have been crushed by that, would have been intimidated by that. I wouldn't have had a good Easter break, worried about that, worried about how that interaction would affect my job. You know, I am an overthinker by nature, and that in my 20s, would have scarred me enough for me to not do my job properly. Do you understand? So this is why I say being silent with white people and allowing white people to get away with shit and not holding them accountable, it gives them the ability to continue to operate in the violence in which they do. And I've had time to like further process it. And, you know, when I think, if I compare that interaction with Judas to interactions I've had with white people, like it, you know, it's on the same trajectory. Do you understand? But I've now developed this kind of like a coat of armor of knowing how to operate in and amongst white people. But I made the decision that I'm going to email the overall director of the entire organization, so the CEO. I am going to send an anonymous email about the attempted bullying on females, black females within the organization, and I'm going to give them examples, and I'm going to do it anonymously, right? To give that CEO the opportunity to like do like a, they do like a, I don't know what you guys call it, but an all staff meeting where everybody kind of logs on at a certain time every week and actually warn people, because I know that the CEO has done something like that before. I had a conversation with someone and they were telling me about kind of things that used to happen before I joined the organisation, and that conversation stemmed off the person kind of mentioning an incident that took place not too long ago that was quite reminiscent of my incident with Judas, but I just chose not to share it with that person because nothing's going to come of it with me sharing it, and strategically I know how I'm going to navigate in this space. Now my contract ends in October, but knowing that within this particular division this is how they operate with members of staff, I've heard certain things that have gone on, and to be quite honest with you, I'm at that point whereby my burn folder is going to get used, but before it gets used I'm going to give the CEO an opportunity to address what's going on, because what I'm realizing is within the organization itself and the department I work in, it's not only very toxic, but there is a lot of people who are going through a lot of things and are finding kind of remote working quite difficult. And a lot of people I recognize don't have necessarily sometimes the confidence or the knowledge of how to protect themselves in the world of work. So for me, yeah, I've got my strategy, everything is on lock. I'm waiting for one more incident and then I'm going to go kamikaze. And the kamikaze I'm going to go is I'm going to email HR with my boss on copy and certain directors on copy, and I'm going to make a formal grievance complaint against certain people within my organisation, because that's where we've gotten to now. That is where we've gotten to. And I'm waiting for the straw that will break the camel's back, and I will share it with you. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this is I need to teach these people a lesson, because I feel like if I don't, I know that operating in this space between now and October will become contentious, to say the least. These white people that I'm working with operate knowing that other people are not going to complain, because people are working remotely, and people who are working remotely are relying on the fact that they don't have to be in their presence. But operating with people remotely who operate in the way that these white people do is very dangerous. It's dangerous because they're relying on intimidation. They're relying on people being silent. And for me, it's very violent when you're calling somebody who has an out of office on Teams to come and bark at them. You're so close to the screen that I didn't realize that I unconsciously moved my screen backwards. Like I moved my screen because I was looking at it when I left the Teams. I was like, why is my screen so far? But because subconsciously he was so close, and luckily for me as well, I managed to take a screenshot of his face so you can see how close he is. Because if I'm going to describe the narrative of what's happened and the intimidation, why are you so close to the screen, my brother? You're so close to the screen, even your breath, I can see it fogging the camera. I'm sure it came with a smell. You see me, don't fuck with me at work. Don't fuck with me. Don't do it. Just don't do it. I'm not the one. I am not the one. But if this has to be the example of how you use your burn folder, then I'm going to teach you guys here. Because a lot of you have burn folders that you have collated, but you don't actually know how to use them. I'm telling you, by the time I finish with these people, they're going to be begging me. And I'm going to tell you, they're going to beg me. So what can we do? And I'm going to say to them, I want a formal apology and you need to pay me off. Yeah, they're going to pay me off for the rest of my contract. I promise you. I'm not dealing with it no more. I've managed to navigate these people quite successfully. I've aligned myself with my boss and her influence. I've aligned myself with certain people. But at the same time, what I am not going to do is operate in toxicity when I don't have to. I don't have to. Not at my level of seniority that I've gotten to in my career. I don't have to. And actually, upon reflection of everything, I realized that I need to give an example of escalating things and making a formal complaint on this podcast. I feel like I need to do that. I definitely feel like God has placed me here to help me finish my book. I do, because the characters in this organization are nothing short of crazy. You guys DM me all the time. You're like, Toya, this is crazy. And I literally feel like I'm working a reality show. But just please remember and please bear in mind that half of the stuff that I've shared here on the Toy Talks podcast is only half, which means it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many things that have happened and I'm allowing to kind of evolve before I bring it to the podcast. And lucky for me, I have managed to, and I've learned, right? I've been working for a long time. I've managed to know how to navigate. I've managed to protect myself and navigate safely. But I'm watching other people struggle to navigate, and it's those struggles that will serve as learning lessons for the podcast when I bring it here. Does that make sense? And I recognize also from a mental health perspective, the reason I am so tired. So if you follow me on social media, you'll hear me say all the time, I'm so tired. It's because it is actually exhausting with these white people that I'm currently working with. I mean, I find white people and their obsession with power exhausting anyway. But in this place where I'm working, it's even more exhausting because it's accompanied with violence. It's accompanied with racial discrimination and tension. And the racial discrimination is so covert, it is exhausting. Having to sometimes often take a step back and realize, right, Toya, you've got to do this. That can be exhausting. And it's every single day or every other day something happens, and hearing other people's experiences. But what is disappointing is there is a growing number of people who don't know how to navigate in these spaces. They don't know how to manage and I've managed to do it quite well, but I definitely feel that we're going to reach a crossroads in this organization where I'm going to have to teach them a lesson. Because, sometimes I think as black people, as black people, as black women, the assumption is we don't know. And I always say to you, being underestimated is your superpower. But my question is, how are you going to use your superpower? How are you going to use your superpower? In this organization, I've been using my superpower to navigate, get what I want out of this organization. But I'm also going to use my superpower to teach these white people a lesson within my organization. So next time when they encounter black women, they will come correct. They will understand that you cannot operate in the way that you're doing. You cannot interact with members of staff in the way you're doing. Take the pandemic aside for one moment. How can you operate from a place of violence day in, day out, and think there's no consequences in the era of Black Lives Matter, in the era of black women using their voices loudly, in an era where as black women, we are more aware of what we are able to accomplish with our voices. They've got the right one, but it's always the wrong day for them. No problem. I'll keep you guys abreast of how this develops. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I've actually really, really enjoyed delivering this episode to you, Judas. And listen, I never paint a picture perfect organization because I just don't think it exists. And I'm hoping that everything that comes out of the Toy Talks platform gives you comfort enough to know that you're not the only one, but equally how to give you practical strategies to navigate. Sometimes, making formal complaints and knowing what you want at the end. Like I always say to people, what do you want from a formal complaint? What are you trying to achieve? Understanding, okay, have you navigated? Have you been able to sense check how you're navigating? And sometimes you get to a point where you have no choice but to make a formal complaint. And that's okay too. I want you to know that's okay too. But even how you manage that has to be quite strategic. You have to cover yourself. You have to have your burn folder. You have to operate from a place of strategy. I'm going to leave it there. And I'm hoping that you all had an amazing Easter. And I'm wishing you all a very, very great week ahead. And I want to thank you for supporting. I want to thank you for listening. And I want you guys to keep abreast of what is about to come out of Toy Talks podcast and platform. I've got some amazing things about to come out in the next few months. Just keep your eyes peeled on my social media handles. So if you follow me on Instagram, my personal Instagram is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks podcast Instagram page is Toya_Talks. Of course, you know you can follow me on Clubhouse. My Clubhouse handle is Toya Washington, all one word. We also have a club within Clubhouse called Toya Talks, so make sure you go follow and join. I will be hosting a Clubhouse probably on the 11th of April. I usually try to start the rooms around 6 o'clock, but again, I will post it on my social media handles. Follow me on Snapchat. My handle is Toya Washington, all one word. And of course, if you have a dilemma, this could be a work-related dilemma or a dilemma that you just want to bring to the platform and you want me to be able to answer it over the Toya Talks podcast episode, then please email me hello@toyatalks.com, and of course I will keep your name anonymous. You know that if you want to keep abreast of all things Toya Talks, then follow me on my website www.toyatalks.com, and on our website houses all the masterclasses. The CV masterclass, which is really, really popular. The interview masterclass, again, very popular. Negotiation masterclass, that is amazing. And I love that particular masterclass, as well as the mother and daughter masterclass. And of course, the recently added redundancy masterclass. And I have it on good authority from those people who have purchased the redundancy masterclass that it is absolutely amazing. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to wish you all the best. Take care, and I'll see you again next Tuesday for another episode. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.